Welcome back to Let's Talk with Parul. So this is a place where we brought up many conversations that need to happen, that sometimes get brushed under the carpet, that are just not up for regular discussions because they're uncomfortable, because they're too traumatic. Maybe sometimes there are various reasons why those conversations don't come up. And one of those conversations is all about pregnancy loss or the loss of an unborn child or at birth, a stillbirth. We all have some kind of a script in our mind, a wish list, details, plans on how we want things to work. And when those don't happen, there is a certain amount of devastation, and that can go completely untreated, tragically unnoticed, and it just leads to a lot of adverse reactions, conditions in your own self, and also, of course, influencing the people around you. Today, we're talking about reproductive loss, miscarriages, stillbirth. It may be relatively common medically, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that it is trauma. The loss of a baby that's not quite come into the world is a unique type of grief. And that's difficult to explain. That's rarely talked about. We are going to be talking about that today. And I have a wonderful panel with me. Very experienced people, those who passionately believe in this cause. And you will see that in the course of the conversation. Let's get to meet them all. We have with us Dr. Brinda. Dr. Brinda Kalro is a senior consultant, gynecology, reproductive endocrinology, and infertility. Dr. Brinda is also trained and certified in various alternative therapies, and she strongly believes in an integrated approach of mind and body medicine, and especially for women's health, I think that's extremely critical when you come in talking about fertility and pregnancy rates. I think that plays a very important part, and we'll be talking about that further in this discussion. Gitanjali Banerjee is the founder of Fertility Dost. She will share experiences from her interactions with thousands of women in her network, as well as her own journey. She's overcome 5 miscarriages, 2 IVF treatments, a brush with ovarian cancer. There's a lot that Gitanjali can tell us. We also have with us Sharada Gopalakrishnan. She's the creative director of Ahana Photography. She's an international award winner in baby photography, and we are going to ask her to do this. I know it's heart-wrenching and it's really difficult, but we will ask her to share her own story because there are lots of lessons for everybody around. I think all the stakeholders will be able to take something away from her story and the apathy she faced in the aftermath. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Brinda, Gitanjali, Sharada.
Thank you so much, Parul. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Parul.
So, Sharada, like I said, I know it's an extremely difficult topic to talk about, and I know it's painful, but I will ask you to go through your story once more, and just give us some kind of a inkling of what you went through, because I know it was a very difficult time.
Absolutely. The moment we start talking about this, my heart starts beating a little faster, and there is a very heavy feeling that is actually coming out right now. It's almost been a year and a half since I went through my loss. So it was okay. I think I had a very good pregnancy, and there's no complications at all. It was a happy pregnancy, and just like any other mother, I was super happy when I confirmed the 2 pink lines that actually changed the whole life. I still remember the day when me and my partner, my husband, had the conversation that night when we confirmed the pregnancies. We all of us had a lot of plans, but then I talk a lot to my daughter, right from the time I was conceived. So we had a very good connection, and I really had a very good bond with my daughter. So it was February 2nd. So when I felt that there was a difference in the movement at night, so I because she's usually active during the night times, and when I found there was a little difference in the movement, I called up my husband and I asked him to drop down, because I was in my mom's place, and I asked my husband to drop down to my mother's place, and he came in. And the moment he came and he spoke to her, she was all active, and she didn't show any signs further. It was all
all very well,
just like any other night. We had fun, and there are a list of songs that she really enjoys, and the moment we played those songs, she was very active, and it was a kind of relief for me, and we went to sleep peacefully. The next day morning, which was on a Sunday, unfortunately, it all had to happen on a Sunday. So it was on 3rd February. We went to the hospital. So I was asked to get admitted because uh, I mean, I thought I was going to deliver that day because I didn't have any thoughts of, not even a smallest thought I had in my mind or heart that, I would probably lose my child forever.
Obviously.
I was asked to get admitted. I was all ready with the hospital kit and everything. And it was so obvious for me that, I decided that it was going to be her birthday, Feb 3rd. But then in the evening, when we actually saw the heartbeat, she was still kicking me, she was still active. I still remember the last kick, the moment we had to see the heartbeat with the Doppler. We saw the heartbeat, and then it just went away with two hyphens. And then, the doctor was trying to actually see the heartbeat, but she couldn't see the heartbeat. And then, you know uh, there were different other opinions, and little did we actually, even that moment, we hardly thought that, she's gone forever. uh, After an hour of struggle, then we finally went to the CTG and then to the scan, and then finally she was declared, she's no more, and she uh, passed away in the stomach. So I think that I still remember what the doctor spoke to me. I still remember the words that was uttered. And she called in my husband, and she said, it is very unfortunate that the baby is passed away in the stomach. And that was something that I think any parent would ever want to hear. Um, so, uh, and then I delivered the next day, Feb 4th, 7:30. I delivered normally. So it was almost 24 hours for me, having the lifeless baby in the stomach. And uh, I was actually wishing, some miracle would happen. The moment she would come out, she would cry. When the scan doctor declared that she's no more, I literally begged the doctor, saying, just to do the operation right away and take her out and see if, she's going to come out alive. But then, even the moment she was coming out, as I said, it was a normal delivery. Even the moment I was pushing hard, I was hoping that, I would see her alive. So that was, I still was hoping for that. I was still asking my husband if she's moving. We didn't know the gender of the baby, obviously. So the moment she came out, the first thing I ever asked was, "Is it a he or a she?" Because I had a very hard intuition that it was going to be a baby girl, because I really wanted a baby girl. So the moment she came out, I asked my husband if it was a boy or a girl, and he said it was a girl. And it was all tears with smiles. Uh, Someone I really wanted, but then, I could not. Uh, I was not able to actually. Okay, and one more thing, I was not given the baby actually. Actually, they even refused to show me the baby. But after several requested, uh, shouted, cried to actually see the baby, and I couldn't take the fact that, they're actually refusing to show me the baby. I've been carrying the baby for almost 35 weeks, and and then I asked the baby to actually. I wanted to lift the baby, and I wanted to keep her in my arms, and it was actually not done, so I couldn't hold the baby. Uh, so after that, I think the life completely changed. I can still say there is a lot of difference between the life before my daughter and life after my daughter. So I have actually changed as a person. Of course, yes, there are a lot of things that is happening for good, and there are a lot of changes that I've also become a better person. uh, but I think it is completely a roller coaster. And uh, it's the biggest trauma that I ever had, or I could ever even imagine. um, yeah, so
And It's admirable that you are able to talk about it, because I know it's an important cause now that you believe in also, to make sure that this trauma is treated in its due, the credit of its trauma, that it is a trauma, has to be given to pregnancy loss, to stillbirth. Sharda, another painful point that I will ask you to recollect is that it wasn't handled very well. I mean, you could see, like you said, you weren't even allowed to hold the baby.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, I
Uh,
mean,
it is definitely something that I would definitely not want to go back to it, because the kind of the treatment that I went through immediately after the laws was so horrible. Um, you know, the baby was handled just in front of me, but then it was not the way it has to be handled. There was no. I felt there was no empathy the way the baby was handled. So the baby was wrapped into the uh, into a cover, which I really didn't want to see, or I would that is something that I would like to erase from my memory. But then, yes, of course, there are times that it actually plays in the loop right from the day I went into the hospital, and from time I actually came out of the hospital. The scene actually plays in loop. So there's no factor that I could escape from it. It's obvious. But then I think the way the baby was treated right in front of the mother was something that I really wish people could actually empathize on that, and the medical professionals could be more uh, empathetic to the mother. That is something that I don't think any mother would want to go through. So
no,
I'm
thank
not.
you. Really, thank you, Sharda, for sharing. I know how difficult it is, and really, really appreciate your sharing your story with us. Gitanjali, I'll move to you, and I know your stories aren't easy either. But and you had a long, I mean, of course, you've got had interactions with so many people who you're working with in your network, but your own personal story itself, you've had 5 miscarriages. I'd just like you to take us through that. I mean, of course, I know that the trauma and the loss for each one must have been difficult. But, from your point of view, your experiences, what does reproductive loss look like in our society?
Um, uh, Parul, I am having goosebumps still, Shraddha, what she shared. And I could actually feel every word that she was saying. Uh, Shraddha, you are very brave. First of all, let me start by saying uh, that you have come up to share your very, very personal story and very painful one. Because, frankly, when I was going through my personal miscarriages, then I didn't have the strength. It is only when my son was born and then I started to look back, and with the idea of giving back to the society, I started doing the work of fertility those. But I can very well, I was actually transported to my own, 7, 8 years back, my journey. So yeah, Parul, miscarriages are a very, very traumatic, difficult experiences, especially in India, in this society, primarily for two reasons. One, as Shraddha pointed out rightly, the apathy of medical professionals, because that unborn child or is not even considered a human. It's just considered some, some cells and things. And I'm not talking for all doctor fraternity, but yeah, and sometimes they're not wrong also, because for them they have to move on or they have to help the patient. I'm not sure what was the reason for doctors not showing Shraddha the child, but I know of a lot of cases in my community. The stillborn children are not shown to the parents because then they don't want them to be so attached. It will be very difficult because the mom at that stage is extremely vulnerable, and they don't want to have that kind of memories or attachment for that baby. That's one of the theories and philosophies that the medical fraternity believe in. But more than that, the biggest challenge which I face, and I've seen a lot of women in my community face, is society. the apathy of the society, and the way they talk, because when I had my miscarriages, and my all my miscarriages sadly unfortunately were in the first trimester itself. The heartbeat wasn't coming due to some medical problem. So I would conceive naturally, I would take it for 8, 9, 10 weeks, I would keep dragging, as Shraddha was saying, I would keep begging to the doctor that एक बार और scan करिए, हो सकता है मैंने पानी कम पिया है, that's why you're not able to detect. And when I would have the miscarriage, the people around uh, who would come or who would talk, they would be like, अरे एक miscarriage तो हो ही जाता है, इस क्या है, and कोई नहीं, फिर से try कर लेना. और they would comment like, ओ तुमने वो उस दिन मैंने तुम्हें पार्टी में देखा था, तब तो तुम conceive थी, अभी मुझे पता चला. तो तुम पार्टी में आई थी, तुम खड़ी थी, ज्यादा देर तक खड़ी थी, या मे बी यू वर डांसिंग, या you were wearing a heel, that's why you miscarried, no, you should be very careful next time. And I would feel so, matlab, I don't know, how to react at that point of time, because I would that time I didn't feel irritated, that time I felt more sunk in. I would feel ki maybe she's right, maybe I'm a bad person, maybe I didn't take care of myself. I mean, how bad a mom I am. Good that God didn't bless me with a child. He's punishing me for being so careless, mom. These are the thoughts that this vulnerable woman has. And that's an absolutely wrong trap to fall in, because you are crying, you're inconsolable, your loss is not even considered a loss, because that was not humans. In fact, I don't remember who, but somebody had the audacity to tell me at that time that अरे वो तो कुछ नहीं होता, 8 वीक का बच्चा तो सेल्स होते हैं, थोड़े बहुत सेल्स ही होते हैं, एक ऐसे छोटा सा इलायची जैसा ही होता है. I mean, what the hell? I am, it's for me, it's a bundle of emotions.
No, it's, yeah, absolutely. It's your reproductive story. It's your child. It's your baby that is there. You know what you were saying, there are so many responses that we got, Gitanjali, from our readers, from our bloggers. There were lots of responses, and exactly this, that you are young, abhi to bahut chance hai, you can still have that. It may be true, but the point is that that is not what a mother wants to hear after she's gone through, trauma like that. So I'm going to go on to you, Dr. Brinda, and ask you that, from your perspective, from what you have seen, from what Sharda mentioned, what Gitanjali mentioned, and the kind of mindset that women come to you with, what is it that makes us not give pregnancy loss its due importance?
There are many factors, reasons for it, and I'm not making excuses. From my personal experience, I've seen a lot of the times, maybe the training is not adequate to provide that kind of service, because all of this requires special training. How to break bad news, how to counsel, what to say, what not to say. It's very sensitive, and you don't have to go through it to be empathic, but I think one should have some background in what to say, what not to say. And the other reason could be, as Gitanjali mentioned, OPDs are running full, people are, running in and out of rooms, there's no privacy, phones are ringing, as we all know, reality. And I don't think that offers the right environment for this kind of situation. And patients are scheduled one after another, and oftentimes we don't know who's coming in with what history, because we don't look at the names of the patients beforehand. And sometimes when we go in to scan a patient for the first time, we find that there is no heartbeat. So we need to be mentally prepared as to, if something like this comes up, how should we deal with it? And if you need some time, take a few breaths, slow down, calm down. Think of what you're going to say. Words are very important. And as Sharda mentioned, a lot of women say this. It's consistent. I hear this all the time. We say something because it's all in the day's work for us and we move on. But whatever we say, it stays with the patient for years and years and years, and sometimes forever. Some patients have even told me those words are still ringing in my ears, and having other children and moving on with life. They say, well, time heals and all of that, but that pain is always there. That's what I've seen. And, surprisingly, it doesn't end with just reproductive years and having another child. Oftentimes in women's health, women come in for perimenopause, menopausal issues, and even in the later years after their, families are complete and the childbearing is complete. When we take a routine history, and we, part of gynecological history is to ask for the obstetric history about pregnancies. And when they have to talk about it, they are surprised, and they start to apologize, and they feel embarrassed that even at this stage the tears flow, because they feel that, and the emotions they feel are some things that one can't sometimes put into words. It's very deep, it's empty, hollow, it's not complete. Anger, sadness, there's so many emotions, and sometimes all of them are running at the same time. So there's no simple answer, but I think there has to be some kind of a setting where once it's identified, then we have the right kind of professionals and who can give them what they need and give them the time and space. Not look at clocks. And this is not one of those 2-minute consultations where you tell them what's happened and then throw the treatment options at them. And, under that pressure, they're in shock and grief, and then ask them what they want. So it's not just one simple answer, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. I totally agree with you that it's simpler for me to ask you a point blank question like that than act. And it's not fair for me to put you in the spot either. But yeah, I think it's at different levels. And Gitanjali, I'll come back to you for, one of those levels. You talked about it and, how people react. Yeah, cha, cha, theek hai, get on with it and all of that. Why are we not allowed to talk about it? Why is it always, kept ki, acha nahi, theek hai, all right, it happened to you, get on. Taboo क्यों है इसमें? I mean, we even talk about the death of our pets. We put it on Facebook, we put it on Instagram. But this is a baby. This is someone I've created. Why am I not allowed to talk about that?
I think that's the biggest hypocrisy of our society. And you're absolutely right that, we can grieve about even a pet, but we cannot, we can grieve about anybody as stranger as a, Bollywood hero who we have absolutely no personal connection with. But when it comes to grieving about my own child, whom I carried for whatever number of hours, days, that doesn't matter. It is very difficult because primarily the onus of that loss is pinned on the mother. So it is like, you are asking the villain to be the hero. Okay. So yeah, so that is what I find the sentiment, that that's why your elders, mothers, friends, they would say ki nahi rehne do, and also because they feel, I mean, I think very wrongly they feel that if we don't talk about it, we'll forget easier about and that's how we can move faster with our life. And that's the reason why Shraddha was maybe not shown the child, because they believe that by not seeing the child, she will be able to move faster in her life. Whereas the truth is, a grieving mother, if she if she can take some break, think about it, be quiet in her own, get that kind of support. And that's what I say, and Dr. Brinda is also very right that we lack that professional counseling thing, even in medical practitioners, and also that complete environment of counseling kind of environment.
Supportive.
Supportive. So
Right.
what I say is, or what I feel strongly is, that people around you, the society, should support you by just listening for once. Okay. And please do not give any advices. You I mean,
Especially not those comments.
अरे कुछ भी मत बोलो भाई, just keep quiet. I remember this one sentence which said that होता है, हो जाता है, मेरा भी हुआ था, एक मिसकैरेज हो गया था, अब देखो सेकंड बच्चा, फिर मैंने 6 महीने बाद एक बार, whatever time हो गया, and so you forget and try again. So how complicated this one statement is, कि हो गया, छोड़ दो and try again. Right. This is not a math sum that नहीं हो रहा है, छोड़ो, next page पे पढ़ो. Okay, so please give me a break and please keep your mouth shut. That's what I would say to the society. अगर तुम्हें नहीं पता है क्या बोलना है, तो at least चुप.
उससे अच्छा है चुप रहो. It's so strange. I was reading this somewhere, and we've all gone through it, that we're all asked to keep quiet about our pregnancies till about 3 months. because that is the time when, of course, it has the maximum chances of miscarriage. So if you think about it, we are gearing up for loss even before the value of what we have is even set into us. We're already being built up. I think women, in our heads, we're just preparing for the worst all the time. Somehow that's how it seems.
I know that's so ingrained into that.
It's ingrained into us. Sharada, just taking off from where Gitanjali mentioned that, we are asked to keep quiet about it, and because, we hope that it might help us to move on. You have chosen to talk about it. You've chosen, at various platforms at different levels. Your film, Sharda has created a really beautiful film which puts together a lot of moms and dads. I think you had a few dads also in that,
Yes.
who talk about the loss, who talk about why they want to talk about that loss and why it's important to keep talking about it. Don't just forget and move on. So Sharda, just tell us why you've chosen to do that.
Parul, to be honest, I had no idea about stillbirth until I went through it. And as like everybody else, people always want to, always feel that, it is not good to talk about it. They say it is so much of negativity to the mother, but then, the media is full of negativity. There are so many things that is actually a mother is exposed to. And if you closely notice, there is always a trigger alert that even I am forced to give, whenever I talk about my own little girl. So me being a filmmaker, I am a photographer and a filmmaker by profession, and me going through this has a reason behind it. And I strongly felt that, talking about, and nobody, as uh, Gitanjali said, nobody talks about the baby. As you said, they grieve about the pets, they don't talk about the babies. And I want to make the society understand how important it is for the mother to talk about, how important it is for the mothers to hear the name. I named my daughter Ahana, a beautiful name, but how many of you actually call my baby's name out? Nobody does that. And that is why I named my brand Ahana Photography, because I wanted to hear my baby girl's name again and again. So I wanted to talk because I know it is important. Two reasons. I want to talk about my daughter. If you listen or you don't listen, I really want to talk about my daughter. And number two, there's no much awareness of exactly something called the miscarriage, or the stillbirth or whatever. And there are so many people who are going through it, and there could be a lot of people who actually understood the whole term of stillbirth in my circle only after I went through it. Even they had no idea that. And if there is a difference in movement for the baby, how quick should I have to react? The moment I felt there was something wrong, in just a few minutes, she actually became normal. She was actually active. So I didn't know. So there was no proper guidance, or I didn't know the word called stillbirth. The stillbirth was totally new to me, and I think I really wanted to help a lot of people to understand what does it actually means. So that is the reason I decided to talk. And I really feel that if I don't talk, I don't think anybody else would ever talk about it.
True.
I think that's a very, very valid point. Yeah.
Parul, I have a
Go ahead, Gitanjali.
Yeah, I have a confession to make here. That when I started talking about my journey and miscarriage, post that I felt a lot of change in myself. Earlier, I would have such pent up anger and frustration towards me, and I was holding the grudges in me that I am the one who, made all this wrong things happen. But slowly, and when I would talk about my personal journey, I would also be in tears. And after that, about an hour or two, I would not be able to speak to anyone because I would have such heavy hearted, feel so heavy heart. But then gradually over the time, I saw that when I started to talk about it, it is actually a healing process. So it works both ways. And as Shraddha was saying, even if you don't listen, that doesn't matter, because as long as I am letting it out in the universe, it is helping. And secondly, I figured out that maybe if 100 people are not interested to listen, or they are, not listening it with the right intent, there will be at least one person whom I might be able to help. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this, Parul, that when I started to speak about it, and people would just come up to me and ask, oh, itne saal baad baby hua? I had my son after 10 years. So, अरे कितना honeymoon मना रहे हो आप लोग, कितने साल बाद baby, मतलब कब baby plan करोगे, कितना honeymoon enjoy करोगे? And I would look into their eyes and I would say कि I had my third miscarriage just now, and we are trying. And they would be like, oh, okay, don't worry, and we'll help you out. Do you need anything or something like that? And when I started to talk about my IVF journey and other things, then people would confide in me. They would say, oh, हमारा भी एक है, मेरी sister का ऐसा ऐसा चल रहा है, do you think you can help out? So I figured out that every house has this kind of story, but because of that hush hush thing, nobody's talking.
No, absolutely. I think you're so right about that. Both of you have brought out this point beautifully, that once you started talking about it, there was more awareness about stillbirths. What are stillbirths all about? What are the precautions? When you're talking about it being therapeutic to a large extent, that makes sense, because there are so many people, and also people learn to not judge you. It's so easy to trivialize your situation and make fun of it. So, which brings me to you, Dr. Brinda. You believe in this whole very holistic approach to treatment, to anything that you're working on. And I think, as far as women's health is concerned, when there is so much baggage that we are carrying at all times, when we are made to feel guilty about things which were clearly not in our control, like Gitanjali was saying, that she would come back and think, acha party mein main khadi rahi, was that a problem? I remember going through it myself. I did, touch wood, it was all well, but I was told that, oh, because you did this, that might have happened. And it is traumatic to start thinking that I caused any kind of harm to my child. It is actually traumatic. So when women are carrying that kind of very, very heavy baggage in their heads, how do you counsel them? How do you treat them? How do you take them further?
Yeah. So my personal journey is when I started doing all of this work, and I was kind of, when I had to talk to patients, I felt I didn't have what I needed to be able to support them, the way they need to be supported. And I was fortunate that I was in a setup, I trained abroad, and I was fortunate I was in a setup where there was specialized counseling services, and things were, it was a little different in that people gave it more importance. In India, we are now catching up, and I think women are becoming more vocal, and they understand and realize they have rights and are speaking up. So now there is a need at this end also to do all of these things. But for me, that journey started about 15 years ago, and I took it upon myself because to train, to do all of these things. And I started with, simple like a mind body program, and then one thing led to another, and now I have learned many other techniques, and it's still a learning process, because the best way to learn is actually talking to moms, listening to them. Just as Sharda and Gitanjali said, so many things that they said were on my list of things to mention, because they're right. I mean, the guilt, you're already going through all that crap. You don't need somebody telling you and making things worse for you. And then you're on a downward spiral, and very rightly Gitanjali said, just don't say anything at all. Just remain quiet. They just need to be heard. That's all. Allow them to vent. If they want to just sit and cry, allow them to cry. So there are many things that, it's very sad, because the medical curriculum is so heavy, and you can't drag it out for years and years. And so anybody wanting additional training, we have to find it ourselves, and it's all a personal interest. But my request would be to colleagues would be, not everyone wants to get into this kind of counseling. So I think it's important to have a setup, a back, a facility where you have things in place, a team of professionals. So when something happens, if you can't provide that service for whatever reason, you have others you can refer them to who are qualified, capable, and they have a dedicated space, a time, the right ambience. They're not looking at the clock and waiting for the next appointment. Phones are not ringing. People are not walking in and out of rooms, knocking on doors. The confidentiality, especially with, you hear a lot of conversations in corridors and in elevators, and those kind of things shouldn't go on, because I believe that, our subconscious mind knows who we can trust and who we cannot trust. There's an inner voice. So you can be referred to a counselor, but if you don't connect with that counselor and you don't feel comfortable, there's no point. So, so that's how my journey started. And in the process, I have somehow for me, it gives, it gives me that additional, advantage to what I do, because it's like the icing on the cake. And if I feel that they require further counseling, then I do have people I work with who are further trained to offer that service. So I think it's important, and again, to offer that kind of setting, and make it easily accessible, affordable. These are things that are new concepts in our country, and I think it will take some time. But the good news is people have started asking, and where there's a demand, there will be a supply pretty soon.
Sure.
That's how I see. And mental health now, I think, COVID-19, although people talk about the downside, but I think it has done a lot in terms of like the mental health forefront and all of that, and not just for miscarriages, for other, situations as well. And but this is a very sensitive situation, because the very core of a woman's existence is being able to procreate and have children. And when that doesn't happen, all kinds of questions come up. You start to question your own existence on this planet. You start to question the existence of God. Your belief in God is shattered if you've been believing in God. A lot of spirituality related issues come up. So that's why I kind of went into that line, because I felt that if I could help that little bit, then it would help them to some extent. And those are just some of the things that come to mind right now. But I'm sure there are a lot that I'll think about later. But yeah.
No, but like I said, that's the way things need to be, and we really need more people like you. So more power to you, and we're just hoping that you're able to set up a structure soon enough, so that moms do not have to face that kind of trauma.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to mention is, as Sharada and I think Gitanjali also mentioned, I feel it's important to include the partner. I mean, it took two people to create a life. And just assuming just because men don't cry and talk about it doesn't mean they're not grieving the loss, So I think it's important to include them, ask them, even a mother who's grieving the loss. Sometimes if you don't know what to do, just ask her. She will tell you what she wants, because she knows what she wants. So it's easier to go with the flow. You don't have to have degrees and qualifications. Sometimes you just have to offer, compassion. Please don't offer them pity, because that's the last thing they need, and then make the staff more sensitive, like the nurses, the receptionists, and, in terms of how to talk to them. And if they're waiting in an OPD, with patients who are pregnant and moms who've just become mothers and crying babies, be sensitive. If there's a room, have them wait in the room, or like what I tend to do is schedule them as the last patient on my schedule. And I tell them to come in, when I feel I would be able to see them. So they're not waiting in that, environment. Or have them go out and maybe they can wait in their car or something. Give them a call and ask them to come back in. And, sometimes little things go a long way,
Just sensitivity. I mean, it sounds like basic.
Yeah, exactly. And then when somebody is admitted in the hospital, for God's sake, please don't put them in a room and house them with somebody who's pregnant or who's just had a baby. That's the last thing they need. So again, not many facilities have the kind of luxury of having a lot of rooms and, to offer this. But whatever little you can do, just think about it. Just take a few moments to think about how you would like to be treated if you were in that situation. And it's not a lot of effort, and it's not asking a lot out of a person. One doesn't have to go through this kind of trauma and live with it for the system to improve. If we have some forethought and learn from our past experiences and people who've already told us, we can start to make the change. And you had asked me if, that is change needed. Yes, big time. And the faster, the better, and starting like right now, if you ask me. So,
I agree.
Yeah. And so, and strange as this may sound, even in the grieving process, there's a kind of bonding that happens and the closeness between the couple that strengthens them, and it strengthens the relationship from what I have seen. And the younger generation, women who are in their 40s and above, when they went through miscarriages, it wasn't commonplace to include the husband and all of that. They were separate units in a family. But now the younger generation is very different. They actually appreciate it. It resonates well with them, and they actually want it, and they mention it. So I think we really need to relook at, how the system is and revamp the system from grassroots level to make a change.
I want to ask Gitanjali the same question, as far as the partners are concerned. That do you find that happening? Are there more and more partners, the husbands wanting to come and be a part of say a counseling session, or even just be able to get that little bit of sensitivity and hand holding session, if not anything else? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, interestingly, Parul, when I started with Fertility Dost, I designed the whole, service around women because I thought it is the women that I need to help, and it is women who are a little more comparatively more vocal about this issue in a safe space, and connecting with men will be difficult. But now, about a year and a half down the line, I saw that men are quite proactive. It is just that they are not at the front of it,
Right.
but they are quite proactive. And I have so many men. In fact, when we advertise about our work, and people call up, it is strange that it is men who call up. So it's men who would call up and they would ask that, okay, what is this? What work you are doing? And then slowly, when they figure out that they can trust us, they would share their stories, and then they would hand over the baton to the wife and say, okay, now you can speak to my wife. And it goes other way around. Whenever we ask them to, when we give a task to the and she's not very sure about how she will do, she will drag in her husband. And we have so many webinars that we do on this counseling and awareness, and we see that in the screen, it's a wife who is sitting and talking, but then there is a husband. Whenever there's something, she will just turn around and she'll ask. So they are proactively listening. So yeah, things are changing, as Dr. Brinda was saying, that this generation is changing, especially tier 1 city women and couples. And I get so many men conversations with them, and they say that, Gitanjali, I also don't know anything about miscarriage or infertility. I also just married 2 years back, and I had no clue of how this is going to turn out. तो मेरे लिए भी वो उतना ही difficult और नया है जितना इसके लिए. And I feel more grieved because she is going through the process, and I can't do anything to help her. I'm just standing there and I'm just filling the bills or fetching the medicines. I just can't do, and I feel more bad about it.
No, you're right. Absolutely. I think, this conversation, obviously, it kind of streamlines towards one direction, towards just the women normally. But I think the spouse, the husbands partners are an equal part of the conversation. And we shouldn't forget that. Even as women, as moms, we shouldn't forget that. Shraddha, closing words from you. I'd like you to just take us through what would have made things better for you. I mean, it was a very, very unfortunate experience. You went through the worst of it. And I know Dr. Brinda was a huge part to, of helping you come out of it. But do walk us through that and tell us what made things better and what things would have made it easier at that time.
Absolutely, as you rightly mentioned, Dr. Brinda plays a very, very major role, in the part of my healing process, and I think I will be thankful to her for eternity, forever. But other than that, yes, having a life partner who can also understand this is equally important. I still have a lot of mothers who come to me for help because they think they can seek help from me, and they say that their partner doesn't listen, or their partner doesn't understand, or I also had mothers who've lost the partner after the journey of pregnancy loss. So I think I am fortunate that my husband stood so much, as Brinda rightly said. The bonding between me and my husband has grown leaps and bounds right now, and he let me cry. I think that is the best ever thing that I would ever need. You won't believe, I would cry even every day, every night, and then he would still sit and listen to me and talk, and he will let me talk. So I think that is more important, because I personally, he's never stopped me crying, no matter where I cry. Even in the restaurant, in the middle of people, 1,000 people would be around us, and I would still choose to cry, like my stomach out so badly, but he would still not stop me. He will stop the whole crowd, but then he will not stop me from crying. So I think that is very, very important. Even if not, you don't really have to have a partner with you, but then you have to make sure that you cry no matter what. Don't just hold anything to yourself. Don't worry if you are going to be judged. I think I had a lot of liberty to cry anywhere, anytime. That is one thing that really helped me in coming out of this, process. And I cherish the memories so much. So there's nothing like, no, you ask me to forget. I am sure I am going to, it's going to be a totally different story how I deal you. So, I made sure that I will always keep away from people who ask me to, give me advices that is not something that I want to hear. So I made sure I'm surrounded with people who also believes in her existence. I strongly believe that, she exists, she's my daughter. And I surround myself with people who also says her name, who also values her. I think that is also important. I call them positive people, and who let us be our own self, right? That is very, very important. I think that is also, and when somebody else talk about her to me, like, I think there's nothing else that means so much to me other than that. So I make sure that I'm surrounded with such people. And I went to a lot of healing sessions, as I told you already, because people don't seek help. And I wanted to come out of that. It was very, very traumatic, and I wanted to help myself. So I started finding different people, and that is how in the process I came across Dr. Brinda Kalro. No, not everybody are aware that, there are counseling sessions for this kind of laws as well. And the kind of treatment, or I would not say treatment, the kind of approach that I think Brinda gave me was totally something that really helped me come out of my loss. And not just that, I went to a lot of other therapies also. And I started writing gratitude journal. As everybody said, a lot of self-doubts and guilt. So I wanted to overcome that, and I started writing my blessings. And I think these were some of the things that really helped me. And I took up baby photography as my full-time profession. So, in Tamil, they say, "Tolacha edathula dhaan thedano," which means you have to, search in the place where you actually lost it. So I got all my happiness from the kids I meet every day. So every day is filled with little children that gives me a lot of happiness. And I consciously chose that. And it was also, I strongly believe it is the blessing of my daughter that she made me get into this profession. So what could have been better is definitely the society. As Geetanjali already said, no, do not advise. There are still people who ask me if I am planning for the next pregnancy, but they have no idea what I'm going through. So there are a lot of advices that comes in, which I think people can refrain from doing that. And the blame game starts, right after the loss. People start blaming the mother, people start blaming the father. So right from the hospital until, in every phase, there is someone or the other who would start blaming, as it has already been discussed, you could have been careful, you should have not done that, done this, so all that. So I think if there were little of, if I not just little, if I didn't have anything of that sort completely, I'm sure I would have had a better place to actually, grieve and come out of that process. I think it is a society that definitely makes it more harder for us to actually come out of the grief. So if for, if the people could be a little more empathetic, as doctor said, you don't really have to go through it to be empathetic. You just have to know what to say and what not to say, or just don't say anything, just listen. And no matter how many ever times we talk, just listen. And people say don't cry, that is because they cannot see the other person crying. It is their, it is their insecurity, or it is their fault that, they don't let the other person cry. So but then, they have to understand crying really helps. I think every time I cry, I become a stronger person. I think I pretty much said everything. I hope things will definitely get better for, in the coming future, especially the medical professionals. And I really, 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 very, very strongly believe that if the baby was handled, or if I was handled in a different way, I think the whole process would have been little more, much more better. And I really wish if I could get a superpower, and if you ask me just one thing that I have to change, I would say, the medical fraternities change the way they deal the loss. I think that is for the day. Thank you.
And you're getting a lot of love from our viewers. Anvesa says much love to Sharada, hugs.
Thank you so much.
Sonal says, I suffered 2 miscarriages and have named my boys Divya says, I'm suffering from the same situation. Smita says, same here. I mean, these are just a few voices out of, so many hundreds who will definitely resonate with what you've said, resonate with the situation that Gitanjali and you have been with, that Dr. Brinda deals with every single day. So as common as it may be, this is, like I said in the beginning, it's a very unique kind of grief, and it needs its due recognition, it needs its due attention, and it has to be treated in a certain way. So I'm glad that there is this recognition happening, thanks to you, people like you, Gitanjali and Sharda, who are talking about it, who are creating that little bit of a ripple, and to you, Dr. Brinda, who are actually making positive changes. Thank you so much for joining me today in this discussion, and thank you all for watching.
Can I add something?
Please,
Parul?
please, Sharda, of course.
So this is something that actually creates awareness, and platform like this, where Moms Presso has taken an initiative to talk about it, I think that definitely deserves an applause. And I really, really, really thank you on behalf of all the mothers.
Thank
You
you.
have taken this initiative, and it definitely means a lot to me and to us, all of us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sharda. Thank you. That was a very thoughtful note. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Parul, thank you for organizing this, and Gitanjali and Sharda. It takes a lot of courage to come out in an open forum like this and talk about your loss and be brave and put up a front. So I truly appreciate what you have done. I'm sure a lot of moms have been helped, and I think it will probably give them also the courage and the encouragement to speak up and ask for help. Don't be shy. Just ask for help. You'll get it somehow. That's how the universe works. It connects people in the most beautiful ways. I mean, look at the way we guys connected 2 days ago, and now we're doing this together. And so it's amazing. And Parul, just can I take a few moments and add something that
please do.
Yeah, follow up to what Sharda said. What I have seen is, when possible, for closure, I think it's very important to ask both the mom and the dad if they want to hold the baby, say goodbye. I find that tremendously helpful. It doesn't make it easier in the overall sense. They'll still grieve the loss, but I think that is very important for closure. And we don't give parents that opportunity, from what I have seen here. Now, in some Western countries, like Sharda, she named her baby, but she did things on her own. But it's okay to name the child and not just forget about the child and brush it under the carpet. This whole memory, one child cannot replace the other. I mean, you ask any mother, who's gone through a loss, she'll tell you this. You can't take, one child can't take the place of another. And especially with babies, I had another client where the baby was taken off the ventilator, but the mother was kept totally in the dark. The husband and the father-in-law and the rest of the family made that decision, and she wasn't even aware or asked how she would she like to connect with the baby before they took the baby off the ventilator, and all of that. So I think little things, like I said, go a long way in terms of helping with the closure, because once you lose that opportunity, it's not going to come back. You're not going to get a second chance at that. So I think those are very, very important.
In fact, I mean, if you think about it, even with a regular death of an older person, an adult, there are rituals.
Correct.
And all those rituals have been created by society over the ages to help us deal with it. There is some sort of peace that you get when you finish. Like you said, the word closure is so important over here. So if there are rituals that have been built for a certain purpose, surely the same can be done for a baby, for an unborn.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I've asked this question, but I'm not sure, I've not actually pursued this, but now, it's come up again, which means I really need to pursue this. I don't know what the legal stand in India is about cremating newborn babies.
I don't.
And whether it's the cremating or the burial. Because sometimes that also is important to some parents. So I think what we need to do is, we shouldn't tell them what to do, but we should explain to parents that, because they're too, they're grieving, they don't think of all this.
Right. Give them their options. Give them
options. Tell them these are the options. If you want to go through, we'll assist you. We'll find the right kind of people and have that information ready. So a setup includes, a team includes all of these. It's not just the doctor and the counselor and an OP.
Sure.
So that's an important aspect.
It's basically a support system for the parents, and I think that's very important. That's really the need of the hour.
Yeah, and if they have a place where they, if they buried or cremated the child, and a place where you can lay flowers or whatever, and so sometimes, and even the other children, they know they've had an older sibling, or and I think these are important. From what I have seen and the feedback I have gotten, I've come to realize that for some it's absolutely vital in the process of closure.
You're so right.
I think at Fertility Dost, we have tried to, take one right step in this direction. What we do is, we make them feel that they are not alone. That's very important, because now that Sharda is sharing her stories, that other women come to her and tell her that, okay, I am also going through. So that community feeling is very important. And because it's a miscarriage, then the treatment ahead. So one has to put the couple in the right path, or help them counsel towards it, grieve, close, and then help them move towards the next path of the treatment. So if you put all these things in order, then slowly people around you will also learn, because society is not going to learn in one day. But when we change, we are the society. So when we change, so maybe next generation is better off that way.
It's all about empowering women and helping them live their life, and not, or couples live their life and not just let life go by.
So true.
Absolutely. So on that note, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.